It's 8 o'clock. This is the UK Tonight. Coming up, calls for the government to treat knife crime as an urgent priority. I'll be speaking to the actor Idris Elba, who wants an immediate ban on machetes and a new approach to youth violence.
The government need to listen to the families. They need to listen to the youth services, okay? Because we spend more money on the aftermath of these deaths than we do on the prevention of them. And we need to really rethink that.
Tonight, you'll also hear from a mother whose son was stabbed to death in London. And we'll discuss how Scotland is winning its fight against knife crime. Also coming up, the long-running campaign for justice given new momentum by a TV drama. Faulty accounting software led to the prosecution of more than 700 post office branch managers. Some of them died before their names were cleared. I'll be speaking to one of the victims whose story was told in the TV series, as well as the actor who played him. Baseless and unfounded, the response of Sir Richard Branson's team to claims by a victim of Jeffrey Epstein that sex tapes were made of him, Prince Andrew and Bill Clinton. And Ivan Toney tells Sky that he wants to repay Brentford as he prepares to return from an 8-month gambling ban. All that's come and much more on the UK Tonight. Well, I want to start tonight by talking about knife crime. On New Year's Eve in London, another child lost their life, stabbed to death just minutes before the UK rang in 2024. 18 teenagers were stabbed to death in their capital just last year, the youngest 15 years old. But knife crime is not just a London problem, and there are serious questions over how we tackle youth violence in this country. Critics say the government's approach relies too heavily on crime and granting police more powers, instead of tackling the root causes like poverty and inequality. Well, let's take a look at the scale of this problem. Recorded offences involving knives in England and Wales have gone up by more than 3/4 over the past 10 years. More than 50,000 knife crimes were recorded in the year up to June 2023. In that same period, there were 247 murders involving a knife or sharp instrument. Actress Idris Elba says enough is enough. Today, he helped launch the Don't Stop Your Future campaign, with a call to action for the UK, starting with an immediate ban on machetes and so-called zombie knives. Outlining his plans in Parliament Square, he was surrounded by bundles of clothes, each representing the 247 lives lost to knife crime last year. I spoke to Idris about why he felt now was the time to act. Idris, you have been involved in campaigning against knife crime for a long time now, but this really feels like a reset.
Yes.
Tipping point, I've heard it be called, because of the statistics around knife crime at the moment.
Yeah.
Talk to me about why now? Why launch this campaign now?
Honestly, symbolically, being the turn of the year, a new energy, it feels like a time to actually really push the agenda as strongly as we can. And usually on the turn of a new year, people have a new energy. So we're symbolically outside Parliament with, some of the actual clothes of some of the actual victims. And we wanted that to just really symbolise how much I think as a society we care about this issue. We want something done. And we should do something. And that's why now. It's critical. I think we're seeing a rise, not a decline. And that needs to change. I think that, we're not saying much to society, to young people, by allowing this problem to escalate. It should be going the other way. And so, outside Parliament, because, the truth is, I'm asking simply to symbolically put an absolute ban on machetes and zombie knives now, today. Why? Because I think the nation want to see that we do care about our youth. Banning knives and banning zombie knives and machetes isn't going to eradicate the problem, but what it will symbolically say is that our society has no tolerance for it. It's a real shame that every New Year's, we're seeing someone passing from knife crime, and it's bad.
And the government have the power to prioritise this, to escalate this. They've
Absolutely.
been talking about new laws against machetes and zombie knives for some time now. They have the power to prioritise this.
Yeah.
And you're calling them out on that because they're not.
I'm asking them to put it at an absolute forefront. Last August, I think there was an announcement that they are going to ban zombie knives and machetes and swords, but there's this loophole that's slowing the whole thing down. I'm saying to the government, let's put a refocus on it, put pressure on this and get rid of it. Now, when they put a ban on, I think it's an American dog.
XL bullies.
XL bullies, it happened really quickly. And, we know that this type of legislation can move quickly, and why not this one? And it should be pushed quickly. And I think, quite frankly, as we're moving into a political cycle in government, things like this is what the country really wants to see the government make a push on. And so that's why we're doing it now, and that's why I'm here.
You've spoken to a lot of bereaved families throughout your time involved in ending knife crime, but particularly in the build-up to this new campaign, and you've seen the impact it has on families.
Yes.
And it's cool, of course it's right we focus on that, but you're also focusing today on the young lives that are being lost for those that carry out the crimes as well, and the ripple effect for their families.
Yeah.
And why is it so important for you to focus on that, for it almost to be reframed?
Yeah, look, Don't Stop Your Future is about the future. The country's future, these young people's future. It's not just the victim and the perpetrator whose lives get disrupted. It's a real reverberation, a ripple effect, and it literally affects our entire country. So I think it's really important that there's a perspective shift. I'm an actor, I tell stories, okay? On New Year's Eve, while the rest of us are having a good time, someone had to knock on the door of a family and say, I'm really sorry, your son's not coming home. Okay, that person, the paramedic that had to deal with that young person's lives affected. Okay, the families forever will have this moment, marred in their lives. And so what I'm talking about right now is how can we prevent it? What is the intervention schemes that we can put together as a society collectively and figure this out? Okay, we can do it in other areas and we've seen it happen, so why not do it for this?
Knife crime is always spoken about in the framework of crime, but up in Scotland, for example, Strathclyde Police have treated it as a public health issue.
Yeah.
They've looked at the root causes of knife crime, and it all leads back to poverty, those from disadvantaged backgrounds, feeling they have, no pathway in life, that unfortunately they have to take a wrong turn. Do you think that's how it should be framed in this country? Because you're talking about youth services today as well, or the lack thereof.
Yeah, I think, there's real hard facts that where they have cut youth services from budgetary, from budgets, then you see a rise in crime, okay? And those are hard facts. And I think what's happened in Glasgow has been something that we should take a leaf out of their book. There's a few thoughts of how we can triangulate this issue. It isn't just the parents, it isn't just the youth, it's also the social services, the youth services, the health services and the police that can actually put together some think tanks and go, how do we stop this? Prevent and intervene. There's a young person right now holding a knife, not because they are a perpetrator, but because they're scared of a perpetrator. And there you've got two people being affected right now. There's some way an educator, a school, a hospital can say, hey, I've just met this young person. I think they are troubled. Can I hand it over to you? Can we think about this as a group and find a way to sort of really prevent this? Like I said, banning knives is not going to eradicate the problem, but what it's going to symbolize to the country is that we care, and then we need to put together some real think tanking. Disrupting the line of how knives get into the hands is really important. Someone delivers them, someone makes a profit from them, someone advertises them, tech companies find them on their phones, young people see them, they're glorified in songs. We need to try and put our thinking caps together and go, stop. The one thing I learned from the families is that the families have to think about this every single day, and their critical thinking around this is right at the middle of where we should be. The government need to listen to the families, they need to listen to the youth services, okay? Because we spend more money on the aftermath of these deaths than we do on the prevention of them, and we need to really rethink that.
When people talk about youth services, a lot of people just think about youth clubs, but it's about having responsible, approachable adults in the community for those who perhaps don't have the role models in their lives. It's about giving them opportunities for careers or education to, follow the path they don't think is open to them. And you're a direct beneficiary of that, right, through the Prince's Trust, because you grew up in London, in Hackney. You've spoken openly before about people you knew from when you were younger who took the wrong path, but you had that opportunity. Do you feel that those opportunities are there at the moment? They can make a real difference because perhaps you feel like it did for you?
I think there's a young Idris or a young person somewhere now who's 14, 15 years old, who's frightened to death about their community because of knives, whose future might not make it. There's the future leader of our country sitting watching this news show going, well, I don't know what they think of knife crimes because I'm not seeing them doing it. What happens if that person gets attacked? Then that future of our country is disrupted. So, so the campaign is really about how do we future-proof this problem, okay? It's small now, comparatively, like 1,000 people over the last 15 years have lost their lives, okay? Thereabouts. That's relatively small. But when you wake up in the morning and you go to the doctor and the doctor says to you, you know what, you have a life-threatening disease and you have to change your course now, you do it immediately. And if that healthcare person cares for you, they'll follow up. So I'm asking us as a society, as a government, to sort of think about this carefully, okay? Our future depends on it. We can't let knife crime escalate.
What do you think the misconceptions are about knife crime? Because talking to bereaved families, they say, look, you know, we're a normal family. If it can happen to us, it can happen to any one of you. It's not something that just happens, you know, in some areas of London.
Yeah, the misconceptions are really broad, from the fact that, you know, that it's some underground belly, you get these knives. No, you know, if you're old enough, you can buy one from your phone and it can get delivered to you by the postal service, okay? It's not an underground scenario. It's not just a black issue. It's not just a London issue. It's a nationwide issue and it's growing. The misconceptions are really, really wide and they're worrying because, you know, until it happens to you, you kind of see it on the news and you go, okay, and then it's gone. You know, and I think it's something that we have to remind ourselves it's collective. You know, muggings are going up and they're using knives to mug people, okay? People are terrified of knives because it's a very dangerous weapon. It can hurt, you know. You know, when someone is attacked with a knife, there isn't a standardized first aid approach to it. There should be, because knife crime is up. So I think that a massive education around this topic is really needed, and it would really be a good symbol for our government to just look at this today and go, okay, let's just get together some critical thinkers, listen to the youth services, listen to the parents, and think about how we change it.
Final question, Idris. I know part of this campaign is calling for cross-party support. You've talked about cohesion, about thinking about all the elements, and, you know, policy not to change with a changing government. You've been brought on not just because of your passion, but because of your platform as well. Have you spoken to the Prime Minister? Have you spoken to the Home Secretary? Is that the next step, to sit down with them?
This morning I sent a letter to the Prime Minister, I sent a letter to the Home Secretary, just to really sort of encourage an opportunity to sit together and talk and be heard. Listen, I am an actor. I'm an entertainer. I use in art. I'm using, you know, my voice, my platform. But however, I really feel that, you know, we can pull together a group of people to help the government tackle this. It's not just their fault. It's not just the parents' fault. It's not the youth's fault. It's not the youth services fault. It's not just the budgetary thing. It's all of us. So I'm hoping that, you know, I get an opportunity to use the platform to sit in the rooms, to gather people that are, you know, the grassroots knife crime organisations, to be heard. And that's important, especially the families, because they really, really understand the problem. They have to sit in the court systems and listen to what happened to their sons, and they're asking these very poignant questions, which might just go under the radar of the policymakers. So, yeah.
Idris, thank you so much for your time and good luck with the campaign.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Appreciate
Cheers for
your time.
coming.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Idris Elba, not just the face of this new campaign, as you saw, they're fully invested. He saw these kind of issues firsthand growing up in East London. And as part of his work in tackling knife crime, he spent a lot of time with parents whose lives have been ruined. One of them, Yemi Hughes, who donated to the campaign the very clothes that her son Andre was wearing when he was stabbed to death. I asked her this morning about the stigma and misconceptions around knife crime and its victims.
I do feel like that is the misconception, that it is gang-related or drug-related, or, you know, that everybody that was involved in that must have been doing something wrong, in, you know, meaning that they deserve it. Whether they were or they weren't, they don't deserve to die in the way that they are. But I have met so many different families, and there are so many different reasons why those young people have died, and it just needs to stop.
Idris Elba fronting this campaign, a globally recognised name and face. How important is that to have someone like him fronting this for you?
It's very important, because as bereaved families, we've been out campaigning. We've done, you know, a lot of. We've been to Parliament. We've spoken with the mayor. We've done a lot of things individually and collectively together. But it feels as if our voices are only heard for the moment, and it doesn't go anywhere else. So with Idris backing this and pushing this forward, I'm hoping through his platform, connections and his status, we'll be able to really push forward and get some of the demands that we need.
Well, when looking for ways to tackle knife crime, many people look to Scotland. Nearly 20 years ago now, the Violence Reduction Unit was set up to stem the tide of knife crime, which had seen Glasgow become Europe's murder capital. The unit proposed a fresh approach, treating knife crime as not just a policing issue, but one of public health. Visiting Professor of Criminology at the University of Kent, Marion Fitzgerald, joins us now. Marion, thank you so much for joining us here on the UK Tonight. Let's start by looking at Scotland and what Strathclyde Police did in Glasgow, because they did something seen at the time as something totally radical, treating knife crime and the issues surrounding it as a public health issue.
Yes, I mean, it's certainly not an issue that the police can be expected to deal with. And there are no short-term solutions. I mean, this is a problem where certainly in England, where I've mainly worked, I'm sorry, I've got two dogs in the frame, this set in a quarter of a century ago. That's when people working with young people started talking to me about their concerns about the extent to which young people had begun routinely to carry knives. There have been numerous initiatives since then by the government, most of which involved the police actually going out in large numbers, showing the public something was being done by stopping and searching a lot of very frightened young people. And some of them they found with something to defend themselves against that hardcore of really violent young people that everybody knew in those areas, where, as a police officer said to me, they're far more scared of finding themselves facing one of those very hard-nosed, seriously violent people who are carrying knives in order to stab and hurt and harm other people. They're far more frightened of meeting one of them with nothing to defend themselves with than they are of being nicked by the old bill. Now, that goes back possibly 20 years, certainly 10 years ago. And the latest initiative by the previous government, that's Boris Johnson's government, was try and replicate the mistakes they made when he was mayor of London in 2008, which was precisely to do that. We had the Home Secretary saying we have an epidemic of knife crime, and they were encouraging the police all around the country to start using a special power where they could stop and search any young person with no reason and didn't have to give a reason, saying, oh, I'm searching you because you might have a knife. And guess who they were picking on? Well, there is nothing more likely to alienate young people. And Idris put his finger on something really important, which is that we have failed to take account of the fears of young people. So many young people have been carrying knives and have got used to carrying knives because they are frightened. They don't have safe spaces. The way home from school is often the scariest part of their day because they don't know who they're going to meet. He talked about closing down youth clubs, anywhere that young people can feel safe and protected, and there is someone who will look out for them if something starts kicking off. Those are the sorts of things we need to be looking at instead of throwing a lot of police power at young people who are very, very frightened. But
yeah,
the problem
Marion, that's a good point you make. You know, and a lot of the focus has been on policing, knife crime just treated in the sphere of crime. And you know, we've touched on the fact that in Scotland it's been treated as a public health issue, and looking at the root causes, poverty, inequality, housing, you know, there are so many different factors in it. So What do you think can be done? Obviously, we've heard what Idris's campaign is calling for today, cross-party cohesion, youth services, and also a ban on machetes and zombie knives. But what else do you think the government could be doing to make an impact?
Well, unfortunately, we've got a problem which has been entrenched for nearly a quarter of a century, and which government interventions so far have actually, in my book, made very much worse. Now, once you've reached that stage, it's like any question of disarmament. How are you going to persuade people to give up their weapons when they know that other people are out there that they're scared of who may still have one? But when you've got a lot of young people who've got into the habit, for whatever reason, of carrying something to protect themselves, and it would be very difficult to persuade them to give them up, where you have the usual knockabout, the sort of fisticuffs that you've always had between young people, and particularly young men, where they're carrying something like that, the dangers of that escalating into not just cuts and bruises, but serious, someone stabbing their best friend. And I think that maybe that is a way into warning young people about some of the risks involved, but it's still going to be very, very difficult to persuade them to give up their weapons as long as they feel no one is protecting them in the spaces where they feel less safe. And against the hardcore of young people who may be seriously damaged and seriously disturbed, but who are carrying knives with serious intent to use them. And it's those that the police need to focus on. And if they do, and young people feel they're protected and feel the police are on their side and understand their fears, then they might be more persuadable to give up the weapons that they're used to carrying. But it's going to be a hard job, and we've left it for an awful long time.
There's definitely no quick fix. Marion Fitzgerald, visiting professor of criminology at the University of Kent, thank you so much. Talking to people at the launch of that campaign today, there is the worry that carrying knives is becoming normalised, and we heard so much about the victims today, and it's not random attacks. A lot of those killed by people they knew. Well, we put Idris Elba's comments that he made earlier today to the government. A Home Office spokesperson issuing this statement. The UK has some of the toughest laws in the world to tackle knife crime, with bans on zombie and cyclone knives already in place and work underway to extend this to include zombie-style machetes. Hospital admissions for young people with serious knife injuries are down over a quarter, and overall knife crime is down 7%, and we will not hesitate to do more to keep our streets safe. That is why, through the Criminal Justice Bill, we will give the police more powers to seize dangerous weapons and increase prison sentences for anyone caught with a knife. Still to come on the UK tonight, millions are told to brace for cold weather as temperatures plunge in areas already hit by flooding. Well, the former chairman of Yorkshire Cricket Club could be set for a controversial return. And a Jeffrey Epstein victim has made claims that sex tapes were made of Prince Andrew, Sir Richard Branson and Bill Clinton.
Well, I'm a big fan of the Spice Girls. I wrote a book about them back in the day, and I think a lot of their impact has been is very clear to see in the modern contemporary scene. I mean, they were there right at the start of, if you like, the modern world, the modern media world. They marketed themselves and they became part of the sort of social fabric. They were sort of social media people before social media, if you like. On the surface, they were taken as a kind of rather frothy pop phenomenon that that was, for kids, if you like. But I think there was something a bit deeper than that. The girl power was more than just a sort of mantra. I think they did introduce a new idea of that girls could flourish on their own without reference to boys so much necessarily. And I think a very young generation of kids took that message on board. They made a lot of effort to make them look good. And I mean, they've done this before with the Beatles and the Stones and Queen and Iron Maiden, for that matter. So, if you're going to put pop groups on stamps, I think the Spice Girls are as good as anyone for that kind of purpose. And the fact is the Beatles were a complete phenomenon in the 60s. They revolutionised everything. They created the world that we live in for music terms. But I think the Spice Girls were as much of an influence on the way that the media world developed around the celebrity world that we live in now. I think they had a huge impact, yeah. So, I mean, and also they were very part of that whole Britpop revolution of the 90s. You know, they were very much representative of Britain in a lot of ways. And people will be cynical about it, but I think that that they did a lot in that sense.
Hello, welcome back. You're watching The UK Tonight. Here's what's coming up. I'm going to be speaking to one of the victims of the post office scandal as the fight for justice is given a fresh push by an ITV drama. And Brentford striker Ivan Toney speaks to Sky Sports ahead of his return from his 8-month betting ban. Now, new court documents released in the United States have revealed claims by a victim of Jeffrey Epstein, who alleges that sex tapes had been made that involved Prince Andrew, Sir Richard Branson and Bill Clinton. Now, a spokeswoman for Mr Branson has called these claims baseless and unfounded. Prince Andrew has always denied any wrongdoing. Well, Sky's Ashna Hurinag is here with more details. What can you tell us about this latest release? This only came out a few hours ago.
It did. It's worth saying also that this tranche of documents were first released by Epstein's lawyer, Alan Dershowitz, to prove that the allegations from this specific witness that we're going to talk about were far from truthful and that she lacks credibility. So it's worth bearing that in mind. But among some of these documents were emails that were sent by allegedly one of Jeffrey Epstein's victims, Sarah Ransom. These were emails sent to a journalist working at the New York Post in 2016. In those emails, Ms Ransom claims that Epstein took sex tapes of Prince Andrew, Sir Richard Branson and former US President Bill Clinton. In those films that she says existed, they were shown to be having sex with young women. Now, Prince Andrew and Bill Clinton have previously denied any wrongdoing when it comes to their involvement with Jeffrey Epstein. And a spokesperson, as you mentioned there, on behalf of Mr Branson from the Virgin Group, said in a New Yorker report published in 2019, Sarah Ransom admitted that she had invented the tapes. We can confirm that Sarah Ransom's claims are baseless and unfounded. And indeed, in 2019, in a separate article, Ms Ransom did go on to admit that she had invented the claims. At the time, she said she did that to draw attention to Epstein's behaviour and to make him believe that she had evidence that would come out if he harmed me. These documents were released as part of a civil lawsuit that was settled out of court in 2017 relating to one of Jeffrey Epstein's victims, Virginia Giuffre, and Ghislaine Maxwell, who is currently serving 20 years in prison for sex trafficking offences. Look, even though these people, these names that we have mentioned, have no allegation of wrongdoing, any form of connection is going to be incredibly uncomfortable.
OK, Ashna, thank you. Ashna Hurinag with the latest there. Let's take a look at some of the other stories making news in the UK tonight. And millions of people across the UK have been told to brace themselves for a cold snap. This is after the Met Office issued a yellow weather warning for ice. Well, the warning comes with huge areas still dealing with heavy flooding in the aftermath of Storm Henk. Southern parts of the UK are now set for ice and small amounts of snow, while the Environment Agency is warning significant flooding is expected to continue. The former chairman of Yorkshire County Cricket Club, when it was embroiled in racism allegations surrounding the cricketer Azim Rafiq, is now leading a consortium to bail out the club. Well, Rafiq exposed institutional racism at Yorkshire, which led to a wider review of the sport in the UK. He told Sky News Today that former chairman Colin Graves shouldn't be allowed to run Yorkshire after showing no contrition over the scandal. BT is launching a trial to convert old green street cabinets into electric vehicle charging points. Now, you may recognise the metal curbside cabinets. They were traditionally used to store cabling, but many of them are now being given a new lease of life. The first converted cabinet is going to be installed in Scotland in the next few weeks. BT are hoping 60,000 in total will be converted in a pilot programme helping to tackle the shortfall in chargers for electric cars. Still to come on the UK Tonight, I'm going to speak to one of the victims of the post office scandal portrayed in the ITV drama, which has given the fight for justice new momentum, as well as the actor who played him. The Post Office Minister said tonight the government is determined to get justice for former postmasters who were wrongly convicted in the Horizon scandal. More than 700 people were prosecuted after faulty accounting software made it look like money was missing from their shops. Some died before their names were cleared. Well, the campaign for justice has been running for years, but an ITV drama has brought a new level of public scrutiny and pressure on the government to respond. Our political editor, Beth Rigby, has this report.
A stump speech in Accrington to kick off the PM's election year. This marginal red wall seat is what he needs to hold on to have any hope of staying in number 10.
2023 last year was not an easy year for anyone.
But the start of 2024 also far from easy. A scandal not of his making, now giving Rishi Sunak questions to answer. Hundreds of postmasters wrongly criminalised and convicted in the Horizon scandal, still waiting for justice and compensation.
This is an absolutely appalling miscarriage of justice. People should know that we are on it and we want to make this right. The money's been set aside. Now, what we are now looking at is how can we speed all of that up? Thank you very much, everyone.
But inside the room, genuine anger at how long this scandal has dragged out and politicians' failure to act. But do you feel really outraged about it?
I am. I'm outrageous. It's down to all the government, all them down at House of Commons, not just one party, all parties. Put your damn heads together, give that lot the money that they deserve.
In Loughborough, the Labour leader out and about too, with survivors of Storm Henk, clear the government needs to take action and fast.
Compensation needs to be paid. That's already allocated for in the Treasury. They need to get on and pay that.
Questions too for the Lib Dem leader Sir Ed Davey over his alleged dismissal of victims' concerns during the coalition years when he was the postal minister.
I wish I'd known then what we all know now. The post office was lying on an industrial scale to me and other ministers.
In Westminster, finally action. Postal Minister clear the government understands the urgency of the injustice.
We have a clear moral duty to right these wrongs to the best of our ability. To support those lives who were turned upside down by this scandal, we have provided significant funding for compensation. And we have been clear that it should not be the taxpayer alone who picks up the tab.
Kevin Hollinrake announcing ministers are drawing up plans to fast-track compensation and quash convictions. Rishi Sunak wanted to kick off the new year with a message to voters, stick with me, but instead this Prime Minister, already hounded by the contagion of the Johnson then Truss premierships, now finds himself weighed down by what happened under David Cameron's watch over this post-office debacle. And the danger for the Prime Minister is that a scandal not of his making only serves to bring his government down further still. Yet another mess left behind by a predecessor, clouding this PM's pitch. He wants to be the fresh start, but 13 years of the Tories' track record getting in his way again. Beth Rigby, Sky News, Westminster.
I'm joined now in the UK tonight by Michael Rudkin, whose story was told in the ITV drama, and the actor who played him, Sean Dooley. Good to see you both tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. Michael, I'm going to come to you first. You've been campaigning for justice for 15 years. Some 8 million people and counting have seen this ITV drama, and the level of public outcry is enormous. Does this feel like a tipping point?
Just to come back on that particular issue of battling this for 15 years, it's actually been slightly longer than that. It's been 20 years while I was an executive officer, with doubts in my mind as to the reliability of the Horizon system. But it's been 15 years since I've been out of office because of the Horizon misbalancing.
That's 2 decades, and here we are today. Do you feel like your campaign that you've lived every day for those 20 years has been given fresh momentum? Do you feel like this ITV drama could be something that pushes this to the point that you want?
Well, from the start of this, I felt as though I was the one that was, along with other colleagues, climbing Mount Everest and never reached the summit. And all of a sudden, along comes this programme with a wonderful team of actors that really got the message across that the public and the MPs fully understood what was happening. My MP, Andrew Bridgeton, has been from the outset a pillar of strength for the 13 years that he's supported me at trying to prove this issue of the problems that were inherent within the Horizon system.
Michael, I'm going to bring in Sean. You two have met. I know that you've spoken. Sean, how did you feel taking on this role? Because Michael makes a good point there. The thing about the dramatisation of this scandal is that it portrays the emotion, the stigma that surrounded those affected, the mental toll it took. And I think it really brought their story home to people, just how damaging this was to people's lives. People lost everything.
Yeah, I mean, Hi, Michael. Just kind of going back on Beth Rigby's piece there. You know, this was an appalling miscarriage of justice prior to our drama going out, and for Rishi just to talk about it now, I mean, this has been horrific for a long time, and I think what the difference is that when, as human beings, I did the same. When you read an article or you read it's in black and white and it's on paper and it's flat, you feel very differently to suddenly seeing wonderful Monica Dolan break down in tears and experience something as closely as she can. And all of a sudden, the empathy level shoots up and you know, it brings it home easier, which, you know, Gwyneth Hughes, the writer, did an amazing job of consolidating those 20 years and bringing them together to form a piece that, quite rightly, the nation have grabbed and are angry. My X feed is full of angry people, and quite rightly. And I'm so chuffed that this is the response we've got from people out there.
Yeah, Michael, it does seem that things are moving quickly. The Prime Minister today pledging to do everything we can, the government, to make it right. He said he'd strongly support a review of the ex-Post Office Chief's Paula Vennell's CBE. I wonder what you make about that, because that's been garnering a lot of headlines over recent days. Handing back a CBE, does that mean anything to you? Because it feels like a distraction to the important questions and answers that are needed in this. Just be interested to get your take on that, Michael.
It is somewhat of a distraction that PM Sunak seems to be making this issue now about CBEs, that I'd like to draw the public's attention to one other little matter. There were 3 former CEOs of the Post Office before Paula Vennell's, and they've all got CBEs. Are we rewarding people for doing a bad job?
Yeah, sure, I can see you nodding along to that. I just want to ask about the end of the drama. For those who haven't seen it, I mean, you know, a lot of the information is out there in the public domain already, but there does seem to be some unanswered questions at the end, Sean, because do we ever get to the bottom of what actually went wrong? We know there was a system failure, a computer failure, but, you know, that is a big question in all of this. What actually went wrong? I'll put that question to both of you. Sean, to you first.
The most difficult thing about this, and I've done lots of dramas, and I've played lots of bad people who've done bad things. And you can kind of always find a reason for why that person behaves the way they do. And I think the difficulty with this drama is that you watch this and you see the Post Office and you can't comprehend why they're doing it or what the end game is or what they gain from it other than protecting a brand. And so it makes it really difficult. You're left at the end going, I don't understand what you wanted from this or why you would behave so cruelly to these people. But just picking up on the other thing you said, my worry is that the Paula Vennell's thing is that we're really overlooking Fujitsu and we're really overlooking the government still employing Fujitsu. And there's culpability within Fujitsu and Post Office. And it shouldn't, as much as, you know, I want the CBE gone and everything else, it shouldn't all land at her door. That's my own opinion, not nobody else's.
Yeah, Michael, I wanted to ask you about Fujitsu, but I'll first ask you about the question I put to Sean there.
Well, I'm just going to say something slightly different. I hope my younger brother picks it up. And that is, the CBE does have to be removed. Oh, yeah. That is point number 1. Point number 2, we do need a thorough investigation as to why Fujitsu have been allowed to get away with this. Why, when the government commissioned tenders and IBM quoted for replenishing the whole network with hardware and software, and yet it never happened. The government have reappointed Fujitsu to put further enhancements to big systems that are already in place. Just, again, a reward for doing wrong.
Yeah, Fujitsu have apologised. But since these problems came to light, you know, 15, nearly 20 years ago, you had suspicions. They've been continually awarded government contracts worth millions of pounds. The hard questions have not been asked of Fujitsu. Will we ever get to the bottom of this unless that's done?
I don't really think that we will ever get to the real bottom of things. What we can do is we can tidy up and make people's lives, because let's not forget, we've got people who've been out, had this done to them for 2 decades or more. We've got people that are now dying because of age. We've got, like myself, I'm 66. What do I do for my retirement? How do I fund myself? They've taken all my assets.
And you haven't accepted compensation yet?
I've accepted an interim payment like most of the people in the group litigation order did, of the 555. My wife was the one who got prosecuted because I was the union rep and I was in London all the time, so I couldn't have done it. But they tried to make it out that she'd done it.
Well, Michael, you know, let's hope that this ITV drama does bring you to a point where you can finally move this campaign on and get some kind of resolution, the compensation that you want, and importantly, people held to account, because I know that is so important for you and all the other sub-postmasters that have been affected. Michael, thank you so much for coming on to talk to us.
Reiterate again, it's taken 2 decades to get to this point, and if it hadn't have been for the actors, the writers and the producers, we wouldn't have blown this scandal wide open. Thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you for letting us have your story, mate.
Oh, well, Michael, thank you. And Sean, thank you as well. Sean, like you said, a privilege to tell their story, and you do it really well. You know, millions of viewers is coming to their attention and public outrage. This story will continue. We'll follow it here on the UK Tonight. Thank you both.
Cheers. Thank you. See you later, Michael.
Well, that story, sure to feature in tomorrow's newspapers. We'll have our extended press preview and news review from 10:30 this evening. Joining Anna Botting, the Chief Executive of Total Politics Group, Mark Wallace, and The Guardian's political editor, Pippa Crerar. Coming up on the UK Tonight, I'll speak to the wildlife photographer who captured a scene similar to Ratatouille, if you're familiar with that animation, unfolding in his very own garden shed. And Ivan Toney drops a huge hint over his future in an exclusive interview with Sky Sports. We'll bring you the details next.
I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent. Well, there's a real sense now that people are beginning to expect that this whole airlift is coming to an end, and they're really, really desperate. We saw snatch squads going in, grabbing people and putting them into trucks.
You either live and recover, or you die.
Okay, so that's like a war.
That's the war, yes.
We help you understand the world with us. Over the past 24 hours, the soldiers have been attacked on a number of occasions. It's really sending a clear message that Venezuela is eager for change. We've been crushed. To take you to the heart of stories that shape our world. They were convinced the United States would become hooked. Well, they were right.
Well, enormous explosion has just come down. I think it was a monster's just landed in between us.
The information on this could bring down the entire network. Not just in Iraq and Syria, but across the world.
Thought I could throw a bit of pig withdrawn. It's so hot.
I'm Katie Spencer and I'm Sky News' arts and entertainment correspondent.
Hello, welcome back. Coming up, I'm going to speak to the photographer who discovered a tiny mouse helping to keep his shed squeaky clean. Julian is here with the sport first, though. And Julian, a really big talking point today, particularly around the January transfer window, is the future of Brentford striker Ivan Toney, who we haven't seen in 8 months after that ban for breaking FA betting rules. But he's been talking today. What's he been saying? It's worth reminding people, actually, if they haven't been following this story, why he's not been around for 8 months.
Yeah, I mean, it was back in the middle of May last year when he'd actually just enjoyed his best Premier League goal-scoring season, 20 goals. He was in and around the England squad, but then was hit with that 8-month ban for 232 breaches of breaking the FA's betting rules. So he was out of the game from May until now, really. He was allowed to come back into training in September. He played his first game at the weekend behind closed doors for the B team, and he scored a hat-trick, almost like he was never away. But, of course, all the time there's been talk about whether he'll be at the club past January. We'll talk about that in just a moment, but he's been speaking exclusively to Sky Sports News, and he says he wants to repay the club for standing by him.
Everybody's been supportive. I feel like, especially the club that was right behind me from the first bit, and like the fans behind me as well, which was a massive part. Even when I'm not at games, they're just singing my name, and I'll get loads of messages on social media and these kind of things. But yeah, like, as a whole, everybody knows Brentford's a family club. They've been nothing but amazing to me throughout the whole situation, and I couldn't thank them enough, especially the fans. Like I said, they was behind me from the first minute as well. So it's kind of like I have a lot to repay.
Sounds like he's sticking around then, Julian. What's he going to walk back into?
Well, it's going to be interesting. I mean, actually, on the pitch, Brentford have done quite well early in the season, but they're going through a bad run at the moment. They're only a few points above the relegation places. So
they could do with a couple of hat-tricks.
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, they could do with his goals, that's for sure. A club that was looking for a player who can score goals was Arsenal, of course, and that's why all these transfer links to the club, and Chelsea have been mentioned as well as a possible January move. On the face of it, it sounds like he's not going to be going anywhere, certainly for the rest of this season. But we always say, don't we, Sarah-Jane, with the transfer window, you just never say never. And a £100 million bid to Brentford, if a bid of that sort of magnitude came in, maybe they'd have a decision to make. But for now, and from what he's saying, it sounds like Ivan Toney, who will be back in a Brentford shirt for their game with Forest on January the 20th, is going to be staying put. Away from Ivan Toney's future, let's bring you up to speed with the rest of the day's sporting headlines.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality. Getting more people more active. Live life with Vitality.
Hearing you talk about the difficulties of winning the treble specifically, did the challenge of it somehow make you feel almost alive in a way that you haven't felt in previous seasons, because you were competing in such huge moments and winning?
We need that as a club, not just me, that I need it, not just the players, I think they need it, all the organisation, I think we need to say, wow. And not just the results can put in the place where you have to be. And the important is overcome the situation, because you can anticipate, oh, be careful, because it will be difficult.
Do you feel that you, as a group, get the credit for what you did achieve last year by winning the treble? Absolutely,
we got the credit. Absolutely. And it doesn't matter if you, as an environment outside the media, give us credit, but the credit gives to us how nice it was, how difficult it was, and it's enough, belong to us, you know. Always is not nice, the compliments, but the compliments I have to put in the balance that is because just you win. We're doing the same. If you don't win, it's a chaos, it's a disaster, it's a bad situation. So I'm so sorry, but we are judged, it depends on the results, not. I would like to be judged, it depends of what we deserve.
Was there a moment last season, talking about the treble again, when you felt that you were going to win it, or was it literally when you won that final?
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality.
Time now for a quick look at the weather.
Warm memories wherever you go. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
The next few days look mostly quiet and cold, with a stiff breeze bringing a significant wind chill to the south. It's going to be mostly dry this evening, but southern Britain will be wintry with a scattering of snow showers. Eastern British and southern Irish coast may catch the odd rain shower as well. Snow showers will mostly clear through southwestern Britain overnight, bringing a few small accumulations.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Now, we like to leave you with something weird and wonderful here on the UK Tonight. This next story falls into both of those categories. Take a look at this. Avid wildlife photographer Rodney Holbrook set up a camera trap in his shed after noticing that things were being moved around in the night, only to discover that it was a mouse who was helping him to keep things in his shed tidy. And I'm glad to say that Rodney joins me now. No rodent though, Rodney. Where is the mouse?
Oh, I can't bring the mouse in, I'm afraid.
Well, that's the thing. You noticed somebody was tidying up your shed, you just didn't know who. So talk me through what happened next.
Well, what happened was I had the nuts in the box and the nuts was disappearing, first of all. So I thought, where's these nuts going? So I went into my cupboard I got out in the shed and went into the bottom drawer there. And in there I got an old pair of shoes and it was full of nuts. So the mouse had taken them from the box and put them in the old shoes. So I thought, that's a bit odd, that. So the next thing happened was that I had the nuts in there. And then I went in the next morning and there was some items put in the box. So I thought I'm going to set up a night camera, a trail camera, and that's what I done. And this is what I captured. As you can see, what's on there now. The mouse was putting all the items, well, most of them, into the box on top of the nuts.
You couldn't believe what you were seeing because the mouse is doing this in pitch black and is very meticulous at tidying.
That's what I mean, yeah. It's because this is infrared film, so it's not light like this, obviously. It's pitch black. Putting that stick on there is amazing, yeah.
So since you've recorded this, have you been leaving things out for the mouse to tidy up, hoping it will come back? What's been happening since?
Well, it comes back every night. It's probably out there now.
Please tell me you leave out a little treat for doing all this hard work for you. No. You're quite messy, Rodney.
No, not yet, I haven't, no.
Maybe a little bit of cheese or something like that as a little reward. That mouse is working hard for you.
I might think about it.
Maybe you can stretch that. There's always a bit of cheese left over after Christmas.
Yeah.
Rodney, pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much.
And to you, Sarah-Jane. Lovely. Thank you.
Oh, well, that's all for the UK Tonight. What a lovely note to end on. We'll see you tomorrow night at 8.